The CO was kneeling. Not metaphorically. Actually on his knees, in his $15,000 suit, on the Italian marble of the executive boardroom, in front of the cleaning woman. Ava Carter's brain tried to process the image. System error. Does not compute. Reboot. Around the conference table, executives froze mid-breath. The Orion representatives exchanged glances that cost millions in lost poker faces. Miranda Knox had gone the color of old snow, her perfectly manicured fingers gripping her leather portfolio like it might save her from drowning. And Mrs. Park, the woman Ava had shared morning tea with for months, the woman whose English was supposedly not so good, the woman who emptied trash cans and knew everyone's secrets because invisible people hear everything, stood perfectly still in her gray uniform. She looked at Tae-yang the way a general might regard a lieutenant who'd finally learned to salute properly. "Madame Hanley," Tae-yang said, and his voice cracked on her name like he was 17 again. "We're ready for your audit." That's when Ava understood. She'd been having tea with the most dangerous person in the building. And yesterday, completely unaware, she'd saved that person's life. But to understand how the invisible girl became the woman standing 3 feet from a kneeling CO, we need to go back. Back to when Ava Carter was just another piece of corporate furniture, and kindness was the most dangerous currency you could spend. 19 months earlier, Ava had learned the rules of Virex Holdings within her first week. The glass and steel tower overlooking the financial district operated on a simple hierarchy: pedigree, wardrobe, and proximity to power. Your university determined your floor. Your clothes determined your worth. Your last name determined whether people remembered you existed. Ava had none of the required credentials. State school. Off-brand heels she'd resold twice. A father who drove trucks and a mother who cleaned houses. She was a junior administrative secretary, which meant she arrived before dawn, left after dark, and existed in the spaces between other people's importance. The tower had 43 floors. Ava worked on the 39th, close enough to power to feel its weight, far enough to never touch it. She made coffee she'd never drink, booked restaurants she'd never afford, and compiled reports that executives would present as their own ideas. In the corporate fortress of Virex Holdings, this was normal. Expected. The natural order. Miranda Knox was Ava's immediate reminder of that order. Senior executive assistant to the VP of corporate strategy, Miranda had everything Ava lacked. Wellesley degree. Designer wardrobe that changed daily. A family name that opened doors Ava didn't know existed. But Miranda's cruelty wasn't about what she had. It was about what Ava represented, the possibility that merit might matter more than birthright. And that possibility needed to be crushed. Daily. It started small. Coffee spilled on documents Ava had spent hours preparing. Instructions delivered with deliberate vagueness, then public corrections when Ava misunderstood. Passive-aggressive comments about Ava's outdated laptop, her lunch from home, her shoes that had seen better years. "Are those the same heels from last month?" Miranda had asked one morning, her voice carrying across the open workspace. "I thought maybe they were vintage." You know, intentionally distressed. Laughter rippled through the nearby cubicles. Not loud. Just enough to sting. Ava had smiled. Filed the moment away. Reacting only fed them, and she'd learned early that survival meant staying silent. So she absorbed the small cruelties, the daily erosions of dignity, and told herself it was temporary. Everyone had to pay dues. This was hers. But some days were harder than others. Like the afternoon Miranda assigned her to compile the quarterly performance reports, then told the VP that Ava had volunteered to work through the weekend. Or the morning Miranda CC'd the entire floor on an email correcting Ava's confusion about a meeting time, a meeting Miranda had deliberately told her the wrong information about. "I really think you should start taking notes," Miranda had said, loud enough for surrounding desks to hear. "I know there's a lot to remember, but we all manage somehow." The cruelty had a pattern. Public enough to humiliate. Subtle enough to seem like Ava's fault. And always designed to remind her that she didn't belong in this world of inherited privilege and designer labels. Ava's cubicle neighbor, James, had whispered to her once, "You know she's terrified of you, right?" Ava had looked at him, confused. Of me. You're smarter than her. You actually read the contracts instead of skimming. You catch errors she misses. If anyone important noticed, she'd be replaceable. James had shrugged. So she makes sure no one notices you. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to Ava in months. And it changed how she saw Miranda's cruelty. Not as random meanness, but as strategic suppression. Miranda wasn't punishing Ava for failing. She was punishing her for being competent while poor. But then she met Mrs. Park, and the equation changed. It happened on a Tuesday morning, early enough that the building still echoed with emptiness. Ava had arrived at 6:15, her usual time, and found an elderly woman struggling with an industrial garbage bin near the elevators. The woman was small, maybe 5 feet tall, wearing the gray uniform of the cleaning staff. She was trying to maneuver the bin toward the service elevator, but the wheels had locked. Other early arrivals walked past. Eyes forward. Steps quick. In the corporate tower, acknowledging service staff was a sign of weakness. It suggested you weren't important enough to ignore them. Ava stopped. Helped unlock the wheels. Together, they pushed the bin to the elevator. "Thank you," the woman said. Her accent was thick, her smile careful. "No problem," Ava replied. The woman studied her face. Not grateful. Measuring. Like she was calculating something Ava couldn't see. "I am Mrs. Park," she said. "Ava Carter." Mrs. Park nodded slowly. Then she stepped into the service elevator and disappeared. That should have been the end of it. A 30-second interaction, forgotten by lunch. But the next morning, Mrs. Park was waiting near the same elevator with 2 cups of tea. "You like tea?" she asked. Ava hesitated. Accepting meant conversation. Conversation meant time. Time meant arriving at her desk later than usual, which Miranda would notice. But something in Mrs. Park's eyes, some quality Ava couldn't name, made her accept the cup. They drank in silence for 3 minutes. Then Mrs. Park asked, "You work on 39? "Yes." "You like it?" Ava considered lying. Painting the job as a stepping stone, a learning opportunity, all the corporate phrases that masked misery. But Mrs. Park's eyes were sharp, patient. Like she could hear lies before they formed. "It's fine," Ava said. Mrs. Park smiled. Not warmly. Knowingly. Fine is what people say when truth is dangerous. Ava looked at her, surprised by the observation. "I clean many floors," Mrs. Park continued. "I see many people. Some happy. Some pretending. You are pretending." "I'm just doing my job," Ava said quietly. "Yes. And job is hurting you." "I see." Mrs. Park collected both cups. "Tomorrow, same time. We talk more." Then she walked away, her cleaning cart rattling softly across the marble. The morning tea became routine. 6:20, near the elevators, 3 minutes of conversation that never felt small. Mrs. Park asked questions that seemed simple but weren't. "Who decides promotions here?" she asked one morning. "Executive committee," Ava replied. "But recommendations come from direct supervisors." "And if supervisor does not like you? Then you don't get promoted." Mrs. Park nodded slowly. "So power is not in doing good work. Power is in being liked by person who watches you." "That's how it works everywhere," Ava said. "No." Mrs. Park's voice was firm. "That is how it works in broken places. Good places reward merit. This place rewards compliance." Another morning, Mrs. Park asked about firings. "How do people lose jobs here?" Ava explained the process. Performance reviews. Improvement plans. Documentation. Mrs. Park listened carefully. "And if person is fired unfairly?" she asked. "They can file complaints. But HR usually sides with management. So employees have no real protection. Not if they're replaceable." Mrs. Park studied her face. "And you think you are replaceable?" It wasn't a question. Ava felt her throat tighten. "I know I am." "Knowing and being are different things," Mrs. Park said. "You know what they tell you. But what you are is different. Better. I see this." Ava wanted to believe her. But belief required hope, and hope in the corporate tower felt like setting yourself up for a harder fall. Weeks passed. The months. The tea conversations continued. Miranda's cruelty escalated. Ava survived by staying invisible, and Mrs. Park watched everything. Then came the announcement that changed the game. It arrived via company-wide email at 9:15 on a Thursday morning. Subject line: Strategic Partnership Finalization. Virex Holdings was finalizing a $4.7 billion merger with the Orion Consortium. The deal had been 18 months in the making, involved 3 countries, and would double Virex's global footprint overnight. Final contract signing would occur in 2 weeks. And Tae-yang, the CEO who'd spent the last 6 months at the Singapore office, would return to headquarters to personally oversee the closing. Fear rippled through the 39th floor like a virus. Tae-yang was a legend and a nightmare. Brilliant. Ruthless. Emotionally guarded to the point of seeming inhuman. He'd built Virex from a mid-tier consultancy into a global power, and he'd done it by firing anyone who showed weakness. There were stories about people who'd made eye contact wrong, used the wrong font in presentations, breathed too loudly during meetings. Whether the stories were true didn't matter. The fear was real. Miranda's anxiety manifested as increased aggression. She snapped at assistants, redid reports that were already perfect, and she focused her stress on the person she could safely destroy, Ava. You'll be handling the preliminary document organization for the Orion contract, Miranda announced 3 days before Tae-yang's arrival. Her smile was thin. It's very straightforward. Even you should manage. Ava knew a setup when she saw one. But refusing wasn't an option. So she accepted the task, took the files Miranda provided, and began organizing them in the small conference room on the 38th floor. The documents were chaos. Mislabeled folders. Out-of-sequence pages. Critical addendums mixed with outdated drafts. It would take days to sort properly, and she had hours. Ava worked through lunch. Through dinner. At 8 p.m., her vision started blurring. At 10, her hands were shaking from exhaustion and caffeine. At midnight, she was still there, eyes burning, trying to decode Miranda's deliberate sabotage. She knew what this was. A trap designed to end her. If the documents were wrong when Tae-yang reviewed them, Ava would be blamed. Miranda would express shocked disappointment. The executives would nod knowingly. Of course, the state schoolgirl couldn't handle real responsibility. And Ava would be escorted out by security, another cautionary tale about knowing your place. The cruelty of it made her hands shake. Not the firing itself. The calculation. Miranda had spent hours creating this chaos, ensuring every mislabeled folder, every missing page, would point to incompetence. This wasn't anger. It was surgical removal. Ava thought about her parents. Her father who'd driven night shifts to pay her tuition. Her mother who'd cleaned other people's houses so Ava could afford application fees. They'd sacrificed everything believing merit would matter. That working hard and being good would be enough. But the corporate tower had different rules. And those rules were about to crush her. At 1:15 a.m., Mrs. Park entered the conference room with her cleaning cart. "Still working?" she asked. Ava looked up. Tears blurred her vision. She was too exhausted to hide them. "The contract signing is in 2 days. These files are a mess. If they're wrong when the CEO reviews them tomorrow, I'm done." Mrs. Park approached the table. She looked at the scattered documents. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Like a soldier recognizing a familiar battlefield. "This was done on purpose," Mrs. Park said. "Not a question. An observation." "Yes. By woman who fears you." Ava laughed bitterly. "Miranda doesn't fear anyone. Especially not me." "No. She fears you most of all." Mrs. Park touched one of the mislabeled folders. "Because you are what she pretends to be. Smart, careful, honest. She wears expensive clothes to hide that she is ordinary. You are extraordinary hiding in ordinary clothes. This terrifies her." "It doesn't matter," Ava said. "Tomorrow I'm fired and she wins." "May I?" Mrs. Park asked, gesturing to the documents. Ava almost laughed. What could a cleaning woman do with corporate contracts? But desperation made her nod. Mrs. Park began sorting. Her hands moved with surprising speed. She didn't read the documents so much as recognize them. Within 20 minutes, she'd reorganized the entire stack. Correct chronological order. Proper addendum placement. She even flagged a missing clause that Ava hadn't noticed was absent. "How did you?" Ava started. Mrs. Park looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, Ava saw past the gray uniform and broken English. She saw intelligence, strategy, power that had been hiding in plain sight. "I know these contracts," Mrs. Park said. "I know this company. I know what matters and what is decoration." She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a handwritten note. The paper was expensive. Cream-colored. Watermarked. The script was Korean, elegant and precise, written with a fountain pen that probably cost more than Ava's monthly rent. "Tomorrow, when you give contract folder to CEO, put this inside. Front page. He will see." Ava stared at the note. This was insane. Inserting unauthorized documents into a billion-dollar contract? Career suicide. Possibly actual legal trouble. She could be arrested. Definitely fired. Her parents' sacrifices would end in her being escorted out by security for corporate sabotage. But Mrs. Park's eyes held something Ava had learned to trust over months of morning tea. Not manipulation. Not madness. Certainty. "What does it say?" Ava asked. "It says truth that he needs to hear. From person he trusts." Mrs. Park's voice was gentle. "Please. You trust me before. Trust me now." Ava took the note. Her hands shook. She thought about her student loans. Her rent. Her parents who'd sacrificed everything to get her this far. Then she thought about Miranda's cruelty. The executives who walked past suffering without blinking. The system that rewarded birthright over character. She thought about the woman who'd remembered her name when no one else bothered. Who'd seen her as human when the corporate tower treated her as furniture. And she thought about the fact that Mrs. Park had just saved her from Miranda's trap, asking nothing in return except faith. "Okay," Ava whispered. "I trust you." Mrs. Park smiled. Not gratefully. Provingly. Like a general whose tactical gamble had just paid off. Then she collected her cleaning cart and left Ava alone with a note she couldn't read and a choice she couldn't take back. The next morning arrived too fast. Ava inserted the note into the contract folder at 6:30 a.m. before anyone else arrived. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd violated every protocol. Inserted an unauthorized document into the most important deal in company history. She could be arrested. Definitely fired. Possibly sued into oblivion. But she'd made a promise to the woman who'd shown her kindness when the corporate tower had shown her nothing but contempt. At 9 a.m., the boardroom began filling. Ava wasn't supposed to be there. Junior secretaries didn't attend executive meetings. But Miranda had assigned her to manage the contract handoff, which meant she had to be present for the initial review. So she stood against the back wall, invisible as always, watching power gather. The Orion representatives arrived first. 7 people in custom suits, faces that revealed nothing. They took their seats on the left side of the table. Then came Virex's senior leadership. VP of Corporate Strategy. Chief Financial Officer. General Counsel. They filled the right side, conversations low and careful. Miranda entered and took a position near the door. She saw Ava and smiled. The smile of someone who'd laid a trap and was waiting for it to spring. Then Tae-yang walked in, and the room changed. He was younger than Ava expected. Mid-30s maybe. Dressed in black from collar to shoes. His face was handsome in a way that felt dangerous, all sharp angles and controlled expression. But his eyes were what made people afraid. They were dark, calculating, completely empty of warmth. Eyes that assessed value in seconds and discarded anything insufficient. He moved to the head of the table without greeting anyone. Saturday. Looked at the contract folder in front of him. Ava's heart hammered against her ribs. The note was inside. The note she'd inserted based on nothing but faith in a cleaning woman. If this destroyed the deal, she'd destroyed her entire life. Tae-yang opened the folder. His eyes scanned the first page. Then stopped. His expression, which had been perfectly neutral, fractured. Just for a second. Confusion. Something else Ava couldn't name. He lifted the handwritten note. Read it slowly. His jaw tightened. Around the table, executives leaned forward, trying to see what had captured his attention. Tae-yang set the note down carefully. When he spoke, his voice was controlled but strained. Everyone leave. Now. The Orion representatives exchanged glances. Mr. Hanley, we have a schedule? Everyone. Now. The room emptied fast. Executives and representatives filed out like students dismissed early. Miranda tried to linger, but Tae-yang's stare sent her scrambling. Within 60 seconds, only Tae-yang remained, sitting perfectly still at the head of an empty table, staring at a note in a language most of the building couldn't read. Then he pressed the intercom button on the conference phone. Security. Bring the cleaning woman from the overnight shift. Mrs. Park. Bring her to the executive boardroom immediately. Silence filled the building's communication system. Then a confused voice. Sir, did you say the cleaning woman? You heard me. Ava stood in the hallway outside, heart trying to escape her chest. Around her, executives whispered frantically. What was happening? What had gone wrong? Miranda stood 20 feet away, looking pale and confused and angry all at once. 5 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Mrs. Park stepped out, still in her gray uniform, flanked by 2 security guards who looked completely baffled. She walked slowly, calmly, like she'd been summoned to boardrooms 1,000 times before. She passed Ava. Their eyes met. Mrs. Park's expression revealed nothing. Then she entered the boardroom, and the door closed behind her. Through the frosted glass walls, Ava could see shapes. Tae-yang standing. Mrs. Park approaching. Then, impossible as gravity reversing, Tae-yang dropped to one knee. That's when the corporate tower stopped making sense. When the rules Ava had learned dissolved into something entirely new. 30 seconds later, the boardroom door opened. Tae-yang's voice carried into the hallway, clear and commanding. Everyone back inside. Now. They filed in. Executives. Orion representatives. Miranda. Ava stayed against the wall, trying to become invisible again, but Tae-yang's eyes found her. The front of the room. Ava's legs barely worked. She walked to the front, stood beside Mrs. Park, whose expression remained perfectly neutral. Tae-yang looked at the assembled crowd. His face was still controlled, but something had shifted. Like a mask had cracked just enough to reveal the human underneath. I need to make an introduction, he said. This is Madam Hanley, founder's widow, majority shareholder of Virex Holdings. My mother. The room detonated into silent shock. Ava felt her reality fracturing. The cleaning woman. The broken English. The morning tea. All of it a disguise. The most powerful person in the building had been emptying trash cans and watching. Measuring. Judging. Tae-yang continued, his voice steady but strained. My mother has been conducting a ground-level audit of company culture for the past year. Observing how we treat people when we think no one important is watching. Her findings will determine significant personnel changes. His eyes moved to Miranda, who'd gone from pale to gray. Miranda Knox. You're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Miranda opened her mouth. Nothing came out. 2 security guards materialized at her sides. She looked around wildly, seeking allies, but found only averted eyes. They walked her out like a criminal, and the door closed on her corporate execution. Tae-yang's gaze shifted to Ava. Ava Carter. You've been promoted to executive liaison to the CEO. You'll report directly to me. Your old position is eliminated. You start tomorrow. Ava's brain stopped processing. Promoted? She'd been invisible furniture yesterday. Now she was, what? She looked at Mrs. Park, who finally smiled. Not warmly. Provingly. The contract signing will proceed as scheduled, Tae-yang announced. But understand this. My mother will maintain her presence in this building. And her audit continues. The meeting resumed. Contracts were signed. The merger was finalized. Ava stood near the window, watching billions of dollars change hands, unable to process that her life had just transformed because she'd been kind to a woman in a gray uniform. After the Orion representatives left, after the executives dispersed, Tae-yang approached her, "The note my mother left," he said quietly. It said, "There is one person in this building who still remembers what we built this company to be. Protect her." He paused. "She meant you." Ava didn't know what to say. Tae-yang studied her face like he was trying to solve an equation. "Everyone around me wants something," he said. "Position. Money. You never asked for anything. You just did your job and treated people with dignity. Do you understand how rare that is?" "I was just," Ava started. "Being decent," Tae-yang finished. "In this tower, that makes you a statistical anomaly." He handed her a building access card. "But executive level. All floors. All hours. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. My office. We have work to do." Then he walked away, leaving Ava holding a key to a world she'd never imagined entering. That night, Ava couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the morning tea. The questions Mrs. Park had asked. How did people get fired? Who truly held power? She'd been studying the system, and Ava had been her test case. The girl who helped without expecting reward. Who survived cruelty without becoming cruel. The next morning, Ava arrived at 5:50 a.m. Tae-yang's office was on the 43rd floor. She'd never been above 39. The elevator ride felt like ascending into another atmosphere. His office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Minimalist furniture. A desk that probably cost more than her car. Tae-yang was already there, reviewing documents, dressed in the same black suit like it was armor. "Contract files from the Orion merger," he said without preamble. "Review them. Flag anything unusual." Ava took the stack. Spent 3 hours reading. Found something on page 67, a discrepancy in the accounting annexes. Numbers that didn't quite align. Small enough to miss. Large enough to matter. She brought it to Tae-yang. He studied the page. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. "This would have cost us 40 million over 5 years, he said quietly. "How did you catch it?" "I read everything," Ava said. "All of it. Not just the summary. Most executives don't." He looked at her. "You just prevented a disaster. On your first day." He made a call. 30 minutes later, the Orion contract was being renegotiated. The discrepancy was corrected. Ava sat in her new office, a glass cube adjacent to Tae-yang's, and tried to process that she'd just influenced a billion-dollar deal. But the tower didn't forgive Ascension. Over the next weeks, Ava faced hostility that made Miranda's cruelty look amateur. Whispers in hallways. Meetings where she was deliberately excluded. Anonymous emails questioning her qualifications. The executives who'd ignored her now watched her like a threat, and the assistants who'd envied her now treated her like a traitor. She ate lunch alone. Arrived early. Left late. Proved herself daily because she knew one mistake would be weaponized. Tae-yang noticed but didn't intervene. This was her test. Survive the fire or burn. She survived by outworking everyone. By being better prepared. By staying quiet and letting her competence speak. Slowly, grudgingly, people began to respect her. Not like her, but respect her. Then came the gala. Virex Holdings hosted an annual black tie event for investors and partners. Ava had never attended. Junior secretaries weren't invited. But as executive liaison, attendance was mandatory. She bought a dress she couldn't afford, practiced walking in heels that hurt, and arrived at the hotel ballroom feeling like an imposter. The room was beautiful. Crystal chandeliers. String quartet. People who moved through wealth like it was oxygen. Ava stood near the bar, sipping water, watching Tae-yang navigate conversations with the same controlled precision he brought to boardrooms. Then she noticed something wrong. A server approaching Tae-yang's table. Nothing unusual, except this server kept looking around. Nervous. Wrong. His hands shook as he picked up a champagne glass, swapped it with another. Subtle. Quick. Ava's instinct screamed. She moved without thinking. Crossed the ballroom. Reached Tae-yang's table just as he lifted the glass. "Don't drink that," she said. Everyone stared. Tae-yang lowered the glass. "Excuse me? That server. He swapped your glass. Something's wrong." Security materialized. The server ran. They caught him at the exit. The glass was tested. Poison. Not lethal, but enough to cause serious illness. Enough to disrupt the merger celebration. Enough to create chaos. The ballroom locked down. Police arrived. The server confessed to corporate espionage, paid by a competitor to sabotage the event. Ava had stopped it by paying attention when everyone else was distracted by champagne and small talk. Later, after the police left, after the guests dispersed, Tae-yang found her in the hotel lobby. "You saved my life tonight," he said quietly. "I just noticed something wrong," Ava replied. "Most people don't notice. They're too busy networking, positioning, playing games." He paused. "You're different. You see people. Not what they can do for you. Just people." For the first time since she'd met him, Tae-yang's controlled expression cracked. Something almost like vulnerability showed through. "Everyone around me wants something," he said. "Position. Money. You never asked. Not once. Do you know how rare that is?" "I just do my job," Ava said. "No." Tae-yang's voice was firm. "You do more. You care. In a building that teaches people to stop caring, you refuse to learn." They stood in silence. The hotel lobby was empty except for them. Two people who'd started in completely different worlds, connected by kindness and competence and the refusal to let cruelty win. "Tomorrow," Tae-yang said, "my mother wants to meet with both of us. She has plans." He walked away, leaving Ava to wonder what plans a woman who'd disguised herself as a cleaner for a year might have. The next morning, Madame Hanley sat in the executive boardroom, no longer wearing the gray uniform. She was dressed in an elegant suit, her white hair perfectly styled, looking every inch the corporate matriarch she'd always been. Tae-yang sat to her right. Ava sat across from them, still trying to reconcile the woman who'd shared tea with the power before her. "I spent a year watching this company," Madame Hanley said. Her English was perfect now. The accent had been an act. "My husband built Virex on principles that have been forgotten. Respect. Integrity. Merit over birthright. I needed to see if those values still existed here." She looked at Ava. "You were the only person in this building who passed the test. The only one who helped without expecting reward. Who survived cruelty without becoming cruel." "I just tried to be decent," Ava said. "Exactly." Madame Hanley smiled. "In a system designed to crush decency, you refuse to break. That's not just rare. That's revolutionary." She slid a document across the table. "I'm restructuring company leadership. Tae-yang will remain CEO, but I'm implementing new cultural standards. Mandatory diversity initiatives. Anonymous reporting systems. Performance reviews based on how people treat their teams, not just their numbers." Tae-yang added, "And you'll help implement them. As executive liaison, you'll have authority to investigate complaints, recommend personnel changes, and report directly to my mother and me." Ava stared at the document. This was power. Real power. The kind that changed systems instead of just surviving them. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you remember what it's like to be invisible," Madame Hanley said. "And you never used your pain as an excuse to hurt others. That makes you exactly who should hold power." Over the following months, Virex Holdings transformed. Not overnight. Not without resistance. But slowly, the toxic culture that had dominated began to fracture. Anonymous reports flooded in. Investigations revealed patterns of harassment, discrimination, favoritism. People were fired, promoted, redistributed based on competence rather than connections. Ava worked 18-hour days. Faced death threats from executives whose kingdoms were crumbling. Received hate mail from people who believed she'd betrayed her place. But she also received messages from assistants who'd been promoted fairly. From employees who felt safe reporting abuse. From people who'd been invisible and now felt seen. The tower was changing. Not completely. Not perfectly. But measurably. 6 months after the boardroom revelation, Ava stood in Tae-yang's office reviewing quarterly culture reports. Harassment complaints were down 40%. Employee retention was up. Anonymous surveys showed increased trust in leadership. "We're making progress," Tae-yang said. He stood beside her at the window, looking down at the city below. My mother was right about you. I'm just doing what needed doing, Ava replied. No. You're doing what everyone knew needed doing but was too afraid to attempt. He paused. That's different. That's leadership. They stood in silence, watching the sunset paint the glass towers gold. Two people who'd started on opposite ends of the corporate hierarchy, now standing side by side, trying to build something better than what they'd inherited. Do you ever think about leaving? Tae-yang asked suddenly. You could work anywhere now. Better pay. Easier environment. Ava considered it. She'd received offers. Recruiters called weekly. But leaving meant abandoning the people still fighting to be seen. The assistants still eating lunch alone. The employees still suffering under managers who'd learned cruelty from the old system. I think about it, she admitted. But I keep remembering what it felt like to be invisible. And I remember that someone saw me anyway. Your mother. She could have stayed in comfort and ignored the suffering. Instead, she put on a gray uniform and emptied trash cans to understand what we were living. She looked at Tae-yang. If she could do that, I can stay and finish what we started. Tae-yang smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost hopeful. Then we finished together, he said. The glass towers stood against the skyline, reflecting light and shadow, power and possibility. Inside, the culture was changing. Not because of policy. Not because of fear. Because one woman had chosen kindness when cruelty was easier, and another had been watching. Ava Carter walked through the lobby at 6 a.m., carrying coffee she'd made at home, wearing heels she'd resoled twice. But now people nodded as she passed. Said good morning. Remembered her name. She took the elevator to the 43rd floor, where her office waited. Where work that mattered waited. And in a small office on the ground floor, Madam Hanley sat with morning tea, reviewing reports from the people no one else noticed. The security guards. The receptionists. The night cleaning crews. Still watching. Still measuring. Still protecting the values her husband had built and she refused to let die. The girl no one saw had become the woman no one could ignore. And in the glass tower where kindness had once been invisible, it was finally becoming foundational. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in a system designed to overlook you, leave a comment below sharing your experience. Have you ever helped someone when no one was watching? Has someone's unexpected kindness changed your trajectory? Your stories matter, and this community is built on them. And if you enjoyed this story and want more like it, tales of underdogs rising, corporate justice, and the power of staying decent in indecent systems, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We post new stories every week, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Also, smash that like button if you believed in Ava from the beginning, or if you wish you had a Madam Hanley in your corner. Your support helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. Thank you for watching, and remember, kindness is never wasted. Even when it feels invisible, someone is always watching.